Probably hit that record button first before we actually start talking about today's topic, or at least this video's topic. So today, on this video, we've got the conversation with the Young Turks, with Cenk talking about the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, what is the unknown history, and Tom Hartman, host of the conversation, break it down. Alright, I'm interested to hear, mostly because I think I'm probably going to disagree with the conclusions drawn from most of the information, but I do want to hear the actual information itself. See how that goes.
Hartman, he's a top progressive radio talk show host in the country. He could be heard noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. He's on the Pacifica Network. He's on channel 127 on Sirius XM. He's on Free Speech TV, which is on Dish and DirecTV and Hulu and Apple TV and Sling, and on it goes. And he's now the author of The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. So Tom, welcome to the Young Turks.
Hey, Cenk, it's great being here with you.
Is it true that we're a little bit more gun focused or gun obsessed as a culture than perhaps some other countries, or not? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah.
I mean, right off the bat, I'm sorry, Cenk, but that is like the most leading question that you could start off. Are we more obsessed with guns than other people have in the past? No shit. We're the only country with the fucking amendment that says you can't take them from us, and we have a fundamental right to own them. What kind of question is that? Not to be immediately confrontational, but you just lobbed a garbage question right at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the start, it has to do with how this country started. We started with the largest genocide in the history of the world, the official policy of the U.S. government for the next 100 years, and we're continuing it now. But if you look all,
I'd have to hear more about that one to hear that we're continuing it now. But okay.
And the same is true, in Africa, Asia, all over the world. Native people are still there, but not here. So,
yeah, for starters, Native people are still here. I mean, it's anecdotal in this case, but I play video games with like 4 full-blown Native Americans. And they're all really good at it too. More importantly, though, they are still here, and that is not why the rest of the brown people are brown. It's because of where they live. The whole area, the whole of the U.S. If 50 to 100 years from now, and I don't know, tomorrow, if you go down to Arizona, California, Texas, everyone there is a little bit darker than I am. Why? Because they're in the sun more often. That's just how it works.
Add those two numbers together, and it's still less than half of the number of children who are killed by guns every year in the United States. And yet we don't say kids can board first because they put their lives in line to fulfill the profits of the.
It's a very interesting statistic. I mean, I don't really have a contention with it. I tend to think that it seems to be fairly accurate. Well, the basis of it seems to be fairly accurate. It's the best I can offer there. In terms of the reasoning, though, no one's expecting that. We go to war, and we have training, we have experts, and they go through months and months of boot camp and continued training after that. There's a reason why the casualty rates are so low among trained professionals compared to when someone violent, if someone goes into a school and shoots 10 anybody, but in this particular case children, that is going to be years worth of on-duty police deaths and military deaths. Kind of a given. It doesn't make it a good thing. Like there is a serious problem with the ability to prevent these types of shootings, but the issue isn't the guns in their hands, it's the people that are using them and the people that are holding them. It's the mental health game about it, which is a conversation for another day.
Of the weapons industry.
So then the number of kids killed every year?
Yes, is greater than the sum of all military deaths and all police deaths. Yes. Wow. Typically by an order of 2. It is typically about twice as many children are killed. I mean, it varies from year to year. Okay. And yet again, you've got these fiction writers in New York who would take a real name and sort of a half an incident and turn it into something extraordinary, which then, was published in the late 1800s and then through the 1900s became grist for the mill of movies and TV shows.
So I feel like it's proving my side of the opinion that it's the people that have made guns bad and look bad and seem bad. That's the impression I'm getting here that he's giving off, that it's not the people, it's not the guns' fault, it's the people that started writing about it and making an issue about it.
But the Army can only be funded for 2 years, right there in the Constitution. And that's why the military appropriations bill every 2 years, there's so much hysteria around it, because if it's not funded, the Army ceases to exist, which was the founders' idea. So then the question becomes, okay, if we're not going to have an army, a standing army during times of peace,
I have to look into that more. That's very interesting. I knew about the premise of not having a standing army, as well as arming the populace to be able to fight back against a tyrannical government or a tyrannical army. But I wasn't aware that the idea is that the funding for the military, if it doesn't get passed, simply means the military ceases to exist, which is a very strange thought.
The militias served 3 purposes. Number one, they were the state militia. And, out until the Civil War, I don't think any of them were ever called up. Number 2, they were the police of the state. They served principally police functions. And that,
which on its own isn't a negative, other than the fact that it sounds like, I guess, the idea is that it's a federal program, and there are federal... Well, no, sorry, there are no... I don't think there's federal police. There's state police, then there's local police. If they're acting as federal police before the Civil War, that definitely seems a little extreme. But if they're acting as state or local police, that basically makes them not a standing army. That makes them local police, which at the time made the most sense, because it was very hard to figure out a way to have both local police and a standing army for every city everywhere.
That may have something to do with why our policing in the United States, particularly in the South, is so racially hostile. And why the odds are, if you're killed by a stranger in the United States right now, the odds are 1 in 3 you were killed by a cop. And
I don't know where you got that statistic from at all. 1 in 3 chance of being... I don't... Thing. Huh. I'd have to look into that more.
Madison's compromise to calm down Patrick Henry was to change the word "for the security of a free nation" to "for the security of a free state," to establish the internal integrity, I guess, the power over their own militia of each one of the states. So
this seems to have answered my question earlier, that they were initially a federal police force at the time as the federal militia, and then they became a state force after this problem was made clear.
Right. And you explain the history of it. It's not like Scalia didn't know the history of it. So random Joe Schmo, on the street, or any right-wing commentator, they're idiots. And
there it is, Chank. There it is. That's what I was looking for. Any Joe Schmo who doesn't know what they're talking about, and everyone who disagrees with me. There you go. You just couldn't help yourself.
So they probably don't know anything and have never read history, probably don't believe in history. Okay.
That's why I wrote this book.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. But the Supreme Court knows history, the courts know history, and so how do they get...
Chank, you don't know history apparently, because he's explaining it to you, and then you're regurgitating a bunch of shit that makes no sense.
Past the fact that it was supposed to be for a well-regulated militia.
And he was quite proud of that, that he was doing away with the standing army. This is his...
Wow, it's like, 200 years ago things were different. I get the basis that at least is Tom, right? Yeah, Tom. I get the basis that he's building, but he's cherry picking very specific things and then completely discounting the equally important part about arming the populace against a tyrannical government. The militia, this is why all these things fell into place. He's basically saying, these were some of the issues. They were addressed, but I'm brushing off the idea that they were addressed so that I can then kind of reiterate why there were issues and muddy the waters about why there's still issues. Not necessarily. We have guns for personal defense, for state defense, and for national defense. Just because it's not perfect doesn't mean that the idea is flawless or is inherently worth removing or ending, I guess. So Shank sounds like an idiot, and Tom seems to be cherry picking things to support a understandable position, but not necessarily the end-all be-all position.
And all kinds of people were dying in car accidents because there were so many.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said about our need to update our system. No questions asked on that one as far as I'm concerned. However, there are a lot of regulations on them, and semi-automatic rifles are not weapons of war at all. They're just simply more accurate pistols with longer range. You know, you get an extended magazine on your pistol, and it's going to be just as effective, but a shorter range than the semi-automatic AR.
The license part, you know, with both the written and the shooting test already.
Which is a lot to be said of that. Every state should have some version of that to have to undergo before getting a gun. That's a definite given in my book.
And that would keep guns out of the hands of the bad guys. So
that's right. And without the gun,
no, it wouldn't. Bad guys still get guns the same way. That's it. That's proven, well obvious, well documented. Bad guys get guns because they're bad guys. You can make it harder to get guns for normal people, which will make it harder for bad guys to also get guns. But then the bad guys still get guns.
So Tom Hartman, everybody check out TomHartman.com, and the book is The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment.
34,000 is the number of gun-related deaths in America. That's it? Annually? Pretty sure that's a lot lower than that. I'm sorry, a lot higher than that. But, I mean, I guess to be fair, it probably wouldn't be on the front page if it wasn't totally accurate. Overall, I wasn't very impressed. I mean, again, I'm not a huge fan of the Young Turks anyways. I just watch them to get the opinion and to do my rebuttal and my response here. Tom had some reasonable points that don't necessarily sway my opinion, nor do I think they're as convincing as they think they are. Cenk definitely sounded like he didn't really know anything throughout most of this interview. So, my personal take on it. We're going to move on to Louder with Crowder next. Thanks for joining me. Peace out.